needs roots to grow. With man, it's the other way round. Only when he grows does he have roots and feels at home in this world. Good morning, one and all present here. I'm Dr. Moitri Ocha, a postgraduate student from GSS DCH, and it's my privilege and honor to walk you through the third year of our webinar series, introducing you to the eminent speakers and delegates from different walks of life who came all over the country to share their knowledge and enhance our mental horizon. The main outcome and crux of this webinar is to establish a relation between oral health and diabetes, which is an epidemic victimizing approximately 285 million people worldwide. For some authors, diabetes is silent and sneaky. Dental professionals can play an important role in diagnosing and managing patients with the disease and counsel them who may have significant morbidity and mortality in the future. For our first session of the day, we have our guest speaker, Dr. Pushparaj Shetty sir, who will speak on trailing the oral microbiome in diabetes. And this session will be chaired by Dr. Tejasri ma'am and Dr. Vandana ma'am. I now request Dr. Anita ma'am to introduce Dr. Tejasri ma'am and Dr. Vandana ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be introducing two wonderful people in their profession. Now I introduce Dr. Tejasri A, whom I have known from many years. She has completed her MBBS and MD in microbiology from GSS Medical College Hospital and has a teaching experience of more than 25 years, more than 32 national and international publications to her credit. She's working currently as a professor and head Department of Microbiology, GSS Medical College and Hospital. She's actively also involved in many research projects, also our SIG team member, and also she's also worked on many diabetic research projects and has many publications to her credit. Can I have the next slide, please? From a very long time, I've known and read her articles, Dr. Desai Vandana KL. She has completed her BDS from the prestigious GDC Bangalore in 1983 and PG in Periodontics from BDCH Davangere in 1988. At RGUHS, she's been a chairperson for MBS Periodontics Syllabus Formation, board member of UG, PG and PhD committee. The main areas of research involves periodontal health and oral disease in dental fluorosis subjects using scanning electron microscopy, various non-surgical procedure, advanced diagnostic aids. The recent area of interest is autologous stem cell research in periodontal regeneration. I welcome you, ma'am, Dr. Desai Vandana KL and Dr. Tejasri, ma'am, to to be the panelists for this session. Over to you, Dr. Tejasri, ma'am.
I would like to request Dr. Tejasri ma'am to please introduce Dr. Pushparaj Shetty sir.
Good morning to all. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share the session. I deem it my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker of today's panel, Dr. Pushparaj Shetty. He has done his MDS from SDM Dental College, Dharwad in 1993. And he is presently the professor and head of the Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Pathology and Oral Microbiology from Nigde University. His special interests are odontogenic cysts and tumors, and has also interest in early diagnosis of cancer and pre-cancers. He has more than 22 years of teaching experience and has more than 128 scientific publications in his name. Over to you, sir.
Hello, is my screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
My audio is also audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good morning, respected Chairperson Dr. Tejasri Madam. It was very nice kind of you and getting introduced from you, and it is I'm quite lucky. I'm respected co-chairperson Dr. Vandana Desai, and best wishes from my university, that is Nigde University, and my Department of Oral Pathology and Microbiology at AB Shetty Memorial Institute of Dental Science. Coming to this webinar. I would like to thank the organizers, the special interest group, Diabetic Oral Care, especially to Dr. Anita Subappa. She has been in constant touch after she has requested me to present this webinar. And also, I would like to thank all other members of this group, Dr. Sunit Shetty, and also the principal of the college, Dr. Arvind Ayas, and all the authorities of the universities for giving me an opportunity to present this webinar. I think the best part of this webinar is it's not like how do you give a talk, because you're talking in front of the computer, so we'll be more like comfortable. And of course, if the question and answer session, if you're not able to answer, definitely network will help us. This topic, I will be trying to give an outline of the relation between oral microbiome and the diabetes. And most of the work has been, or of my work has been done easy by, I attended 2 days presentation, the Dr. Anirudh's immunology of periodontitis and diabetes. I think he has covered most of the pathogenesis aspect. Dr. Anirudh and I did our postgraduate together in SDM way back in 1997-99 period. And again, coming back to the multitude of the oral lesions, my colleague Dr. Amita yesterday has nicely explained it, and this all made my job very easy. Now, whenever we discuss about microbiome, actually microbiome is the collective genome of the microbes composed of that live inside on the human body. It is just a collective genome. It is not an organism. Whereas microbiota is, on the other hand, it's usually referred to a specific microorganism that are found within the specific environment. And this, I think this we need to be very clear, because this terminologies like microorganisms, microbiota, and microbiome, these often used interchangeably, synonymously it has been used. Now, they say there are around 10 to 100 trillions of microorganisms inhabit the human microbiome, and it can be found in the external and internal surface of the humans. I was wondering how large it could be, a trillion. 10 trillion or 100 trillion means we'll have a zero of almost 1 trillion is 12. It means around 14 zero, which I think it was like, no, I've hardly seen 5 zeros written somewhere. And I always look that, no, my passbook, and it never crossed this 5. Most of the time it will be 3 or 4 only. So this is how this big number is, how big it is. It is so big that even the population of the world is just around 7.9 billions. It is that billion will have hardly 9 zeros, and that's what is a microbiome is. Now, each microorganisms present in anywhere in a part of our body plays a vital role in the physiology of the human body. It includes development of the immune system and control of digestion, absorption, etc. Every organ where it is present, it has got some role. The host is usually get benefits from this microorganism overall. It benefits from the host who provides nutrient and habitat. It occupies available colonization sites, which makes it more difficult for other organisms to become established. And this point is the most important one, because if you have a healthy organism which occupies the space, it will not allow the pathogens to come there. So I think that part is what we are looking for it. And these microorganisms contribute to the host nutrition through the synthesis of vitamins, and it contributes to the immunity by inducing low levels of circulating and secretory antibodies, and that may cross react with the pathogens. It exerts microbial antagonism against exogenous species by production of inhibitory substances such as fatty acids, peroxides, and bactericides. Most of these microorganisms live in a symbiotic environment, helping the host, and or many times they remain as commensal and they may not help or nor they do harm. But what is important is the same commensal organisms may become pathogenic, or they may allow a new pathogen to enter into the area. And this is what is we are worried about, this microbiome. Coming to the oral microbiome, the work started with Antony van Leeuwenhoek. He observed microbes on the tooth surface, and he found it through his microscope. Later, maybe in 19th century, we have read a lot about W.D.D. Miller and his chemoparasitic therapy, and he's the one who said that there is a link between oral microbes and oral diseases. However, the concept of dental care is what he proposed, and what we are following right now. There are a lot of changes are there, and of course, Robert Koch, we know about his postulates and his link between microbes and infectious disease. However, there are some opinion or the changes which we linking when we are linking dental caries into his postulates. There are a lot of what you say contradictory findings. Now, coming to the oral cavity as such, we know that it is warm and moist and is supplied with broad array of proteins and glycoproteins from saliva and gingival clavicle fluid that are critical for physiological functions, but which can also be exploited by the microorganisms for its nutrition. They say that around more than 700 species have been identified in the oral cavity. Of these, only about half have been given official names, while 30% have yet to be cultivated in the laboratory. They say one person has approximately around 200 microbial species may be present in his mouth. There are around 30 genera of bacteria which are detected in human mouth, and around 25 of which are regular member of the oral flora. And they say around a milliliter of saliva may contain around 108 microbial cells, and each microbiome is composed of 100 to 200 distinct bacterial organisms. And these numbers keep on changing, and these numbers are all on average numbers. At a broader scale, the microbial composition throughout the oral cavity is fair consistent, although we have got slight difference between one side to other side. Otherwise, it is quite consistent. It makes it quite distinguishable from the microbes from other part of the body. The niches in the oral cavity are largely composed of same microorganism. Some may be present in different proportion. It means they may vary from one area and other area by number, by not by the genera. So it means everyone has microflora, but it varies between people to people depending on the condition of their oral cavity. But not all individuals would have the same microflora profile. The microflora profile may change, and not all these microbia are ubiquitous in all individuals. They're not all harmful to all the individuals. I am not going into the names of these microorganisms which are normal commensals in the oral cavity. It includes the both gram-positive, cocci, bacilli, negative, and you have got even fungal species are recovered from the oral cavity. The most common one is a candida. Then even protozoas are seen. Some of these protozoas are linked to the periodontal pathogenesis. And around 85 to 90% of the total species of the oral cavity is Firmicutes, Actinobacteria, Fusobacteria, Proteobacteria, and bacteroids. This species dominates this microbiota of the oral cavity. diversity of the, coming to the fungal part of it, the most common one is a candida. We may see the aspergillosis, penicillium, schizophilium, rhodotula, malassezia, and gabella. Even virus has been linked to the uh, oral microbiome. A study in Spain using single virus genomic had shown that around 15 in the 15 saliva samples, they found around 439 oral viruses, which they grouped about 200 clusters that correspond to the genus level of classification. There are like no a lot of these virus has been isolated in the oral cavity or identified in the oral cavity, includes rotavirus, norovirus, hepatitis virus, human papilloma virus, and the most of them are in the form of bacteriophages, and a few of them are commensals, and few may translate into pathogens. Of course, I've said it may present as with a bacteria as a bacteriophage, and most of these oral microorganisms or microbiota we are talking are having a positive effect. This positive effect is mainly because of the they help in the pathogen exclusion by either competing for their nutrition or the competition for their adhesion sites, secretion of antagonist products which will destroy or which will affect the pathogenic microorganisms, or creation of an unfavorable growth condition for the pathogenic organisms. Of course, the host, it will help in the host development for the normal morphology of the mucosal surfaces, contribution to the food metabolism. It also help in the down regulation of pro-inflammatory responses, stimulation of interferon responses, and stimulation for the mucosal cytoskeleton. And there are many factors which are responsible to maintain this balance or an equilibrium. We may call it as a symbiotic state, and these factors might, if there is any inappropriate or any change in these factors, might lead to a what do you say, if the balance and the interaction and the diversity of these microorganisms are disturbed, it can lead to an unhealthy state and disease, and that is what we are looking, or we are dealing now. So the oral microbiome is influenced by numerous factors that alters the composition of the microbes that inhabit the mouth. A balanced oral microbiome is characterized by a healthy diet, a plaque control, and a good oral hygiene. The imbalance of the microbiome is usually influenced by a poor diet, inadequate plaque control, lifestyle risk factors, bad oral hygiene, and many more factors. These are some of the important factors which have been incorporated here. So, and they say that even oral microbiome is a heritable, at least some aspect of the oral commensal populations are determined by the host genetic factor. The genetic or the heritable is may not be directly connected, and sometimes it may be indirectly linked. Coming to the topic of the webinar, or to the last 2-3 days, we were discussing about the diabetes and linking this diabetic to the oral disease, and I'm trying to link this or correlate this diabetes, oral microbiota, and oral diseases. All of you know, I'm not going in detail of the diabetes. The first topic of the webinar was on the physician's perspective. It has been discussed all about the basic aspect of the diabetes. Diabetes is a group of metabolic disease that are characterized by hyperglycemia due to a total or a relative lack of insulin secretion, and insulin resistant, or both the metabolic abnormalities involve carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism. We know that patients with diabetes are more susceptible to developing oral bacterial infections. They have an impaired defense mechanism, hence considered to be immunocompromised. So the point is, we consider diabetes as an immunocompromised. As a systemic manifestations, type 2 diabetes mellitus patients have a increased circulating level of tumor necrosis factor, alpha and interleukin, and have an elevated T1 and T2 cell ratio, which is associated with the microvascular complication. So one of the primary effect of diabetes is increased inflammation in various tissues. I'm talking in generally, not in as a oral cavity. I think keeping that in our mind, we'll see what happens in a vascular level. See, there is an early stage of diabetes which causes inflammation, which is induced the death of endothelial cells or pericytes. There will be damage to the endothelial cells and pericytes, which in turn induce hypoxia, and later it stimulates the angiogenesis. So along with the inflammation, you will have all this simultaneously: endothelial cell damage, then which is also creating the new vessel formation in inflammation, that is neovascularization. And there will be an increased expression of inflammatory cytokines, which leads to increased vascular permeability and recruitment of inflammatory cells in the area. Now, coming back to the oral lesions, we usually say that complications of the diabetes is xerostomia, dental caries, candida infection, burning mouth syndrome, lichen planus, gingivitis, and periodontitis. But looking at the mechanism, how it happens, we know that there is an immune dysfunction, and many times there might be the features of the systemic changes in the diabetes might occur, including peripheral neuropathy, etc. And at the same time, the patient might, or the person might do so many exercise to control his diabetes, including the drugs. They all may lead to some more changes in the orofacial region. It alters the immune system. We have discussed how immune systems play a role in a periodontal diseases. Along with that, we also come across lot of lichen planus associated with diabetes, the tongue lesions associated with diabetes, the salivary gland dysfunction. Salivary gland dysfunction has been linked to almost all the diabetic complications, and where it may be the direct as well as by an indirect mechanisms, and which will automatically alters the salivary flow, and not only it will increase the salivary flow, it will alter the salivary glucose level also. The changes in the parotid gland might occur, and these changes in the salivary flow and changes in the glucose level may be responsible for this candidiasis and caries. These are the other manifestations of this diabetes on the oral cavity. Along with that, we may have for something like that burning sensation in the oral cavity, and most of the things, there are so many other factors also will influence along with the diabetes, that is your age changes. So to be very specific, or narrowing down these oral diseases, the most common diseases or the damage you see in the oral cavity in a diabetic patients are the caries, periodontal disease, and it is when we look into the caries, we need not look only as dental caries, and we need to look into the sequelae of dental caries, and even the incidence of the periapical abscess and the dentoalveolar abscess is more in diabetic patients. But what is interesting or important here is this particular, the two aspect. The first one is whether these oral microflora has a major role in producing oral diseases in a diabetic patient. We know it is most of these oral diseases are multifactorial diseases, and the risk factors we know, and most of these diseases are multifactorial, and we have been discussing all the risk factors, whether it could be age, whether it could be oral hygiene, whether it could be a diet, whether it could be general immune status. But how these oral microflora play a role in oral diseases in the diabetic patients it is quite a lot of research has been done on this. There are contradictory findings, and there are a lot of what is that say link has been developed that there is a link between diabetes and oral disease. So let us see all those things a little later. And also we have one more important event we need to look is, it is not only diabetes which is influencing the oral microflora into the oral diseases. They say that it is a bidirectional relationship between diabetes and oral microflora. I think we will try to look into this aspect also in this presentation. Now, to understand this, whether the diabetes affect the oral microflora and the oral diseases interlinked, we will see what are the events happens in the oral cavity as well as the systemic changes in diabetic person, and that might help us to understand this basic problem. The studies have reported that there is an increased expression of tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 1 alpha 1 beta, interleukin 17, interleukin 23, and interleukin 6 in the gingiva of diabetic humans or in diabetic animal models. Okay, now this has been discussed as day before yesterday by Dr. Anirudh. Along with the greater ankle or reduced osteoprotectin. Osteoprotectin is a osteoclast suppressing cytokine, which stimulates the increased resorption, and the increased inflammation also induces the greater production and activation of matrix metalloproteins and connective tissue destruction, as well enhanced apoptosis of this matrix producing cells such as fibroblast, osteoblast, and that will limit the repair process. So it is the inflammation, the inflammatory markers are increased, or the inflammatory situation is increased, plus the protective mechanisms is also hampered. There are several anti-inflammatory cytokines are produced by regulatory T cells and macrophages, M2 macrophages, both of which are reduced in many diabetic complications. Peroxisome proliferator activated receptor alpha, which has an anti-inflammatory function, is suppressed in the periodontium of diabetic animal, and this reduction may potentially increase the level of inflammation. So basically we have linked all these inflammatory changes, which is the environment is conducive for the inflammatory changes in diabetic periodontium compared to that of a normal periodontium in both the animal model study as well as the clinical studies have shown some information. No, they say there is an epithelial barrier is also affected by diabetic gingival epithelium, which is an effective barrier in protecting gingival connective tissue from high level of microorganisms that reside just outside its boundaries of keratinocytes are affected by diabetes. This means these protective mechanism of the epithelium is damaged, and hence the microorganism may enter into the deeper part. The high levels of glucose found in all tissues of diabetic individuals leads to a greater production of reactive oxygen species, which is generated by both enzymatic and non-enzymatic pathway. So it is hypothetically all the conditions are favorable for the oral diseases. It is thought that increased mitochondrial electron transport caused by excessive intracellular glucose level induces formation of a reactive oxygen species that can activate a mitogen activated protein kinase and a nuclear factor kappa signaling, resulting in the production of or release of multiple inflammatory factors. A reactive oxygen species may induce cell apoptosis and damage to DNA and structural components of cells and matrix as well as. Diabetic patients have an increased number of inducible nitric oxide synthesis positive cells in the periodontium, and level of lipid peroxidase are elevated in the gingival clavicular fluid of type 2 diabetic mellitus patients. So diabetic affects cells of both innate and adaptive immune response. Neutrophil account for the majority of the cells recruited to the gingival area, and which represents an important part of the host response to the tooth-associated biofilm. So even tooth-associated biofilm is altered in diabetes mellitus. Hyperactive or dysregulated neutrophils may lead to an collateral tissue damage by releasing inflammatory and toxic substances or tissue degrading enzymes. Diabetes increases the production of interleukin and tumor necrosis factor, which I have already explained earlier. Diabetes reduces the number of bone lining cells, that is osteoblast, and also reduces the periodontal ligament fibroblast and increases the apoptosis of these cells. And that's how this number might alter. The increase in the collagenase activity together with the reduction in the collagen synthesis will adversely influence the collagen metabolism. This would result in compromised wound healing as well as periodontal tissue destruction. Repair of tissues and repair of bone is further limited in diabetic patients or the periodontal tissue by reduced anabolic activities linked to diminished growth factor expression. A diminished production of anti-inflammatory factors such as interleukin-4, interleukin-10, and transforming growth factor beta and anti-inflammatory lipid-based mediators may potentially contribute to the greater periodontal inflammation in diabetics. This, which I have already explained during the general factors of what happens in diabetes. This is a comparative diagram which they say that the changes taking place in the microvascular environment and the connective tissue environment of a gingiva or the periodontium compared to a normal. There is alteration in the cellular level, there is alteration in the chemical mediators, there is alteration in the vascularity, and also there is a alteration in the microorganisms, or what you say that microbiome. So there are many these research has been done to link, or what I can say, studies has been done to link the microbiome and the periodontium, periodontal damage. The researchers have characterized the oral microbiome of diabetic mice compared to the healthy mice and found that diabetic mice had a similar oral microorganism to their counterpart when they were sampled prior to developing hyperglycemia. But once the diabetic mice were hyperglycemic, their microbiome became distinct from the normal mice with a less diversity in the community. See, whenever the pathology persists in an area or in the region, the diversity will come down and specific or the less number of organisms, but their number will be more and they become more pathogenic. So the mice experiments have proved that the microorganisms in normal mice prior developing the hyperglycemia was different in the control as well as the study group. But one which has got hyperglycemic, as soon as the hyperglycemia developed, the microbiome has changed and they have become less diverse in their community. The diabetic mice also had periodontitis and their interleukin-17 level was increased. And even the studies have shown that it is interlevel 17 is increased in a human subjects with the periodontal diseases. To pursue this connection, the researchers have transformed this microorganism from the diabetic mice to a normal germ-free mice, and these recipient mice also developed bone loss. But it did not prove the microbial changes were responsible for the disease. This is only the changes we are seeing in there and linking directly whether these microbial are different in diabetes for production of a disease question was raised. And on the basis, there are a lot of contradiction. And in a year around 2012, 2013, the European Federation of Periodontology and American Academy of Periodontology has issued a report stating that there is no compelling evidence that diabetes is directly linked to changes in the oral microbiome. However, the research did not stop there. There are a lot of other findings which are again try to link these two relations. One is the injection of the same amount of bacteria into the connective tissue of a diabetic animal causes greater inflammation than injection into a normal animals, as shown for both diabetic mellitus and type 2 diabetic mellitus, providing a definitive evidence that diabetes alters the response to oral bacteria. And this is the experiment maybe after those statement. There is also has been a controversy as to whether the diabetes enhances inflammatory response to oral bacteria or it alters the bacterial composition to increase its pathogenicity, or it is both, which is not very clear. So I'll repeat, there is no clear information whether the diabetes enhances the inflammatory response to the oral bacteria, alters the bacterial composition to increase its pathogenicity, or both way, which is not very clear. So definitely there is lack of consensus, maybe as a result of the influence of confounding factor, because we have got lot of factors which influences this disease process as well as the microbiome of the oral cavity. A large number of oral bacteria is being detected, causing the identification of false positives. False negatives has been studied, and many of these studies are underpowered studies have been done and published. So all these are the reason why there are no consensus. So the identification of bacteria alone does not establish whether the bacterial community as a whole is more or less pathogenic in a diabetic individual. So it is not an individual bacteria, which is we are looking in many of our oral diseases. It is bacterial community, or what is that, because most of our oral disease has been considered now as a polymicrobial diseases. Another experiment has shown that type 2 diabetes mouse model that develops hyperglycemia spontaneously, a clear change in the bacterial composition was noted after the hyperglycemia. The diabetic mice had an increased level of proteobacteria. Enterococcus was also recovered at high levels in germ-free recipient that were inoculated with oral bacteria from diabetic mice compared with the bacteria from normal control animals. The increase in these particular bacteria also has been noted in the other studies and linked it to the pathogenic or a pathologic changes in diabetic condition. To overall reduction in oral microbial diversity is also compared with in a normal animals. In a diabetic animals compared with the normal animals. So these are all favoring their the link between the diabetes and change in the oral microflora. So the cause and effect relationship have been established, showing that blocking advanced glycation product signaling reduces the inflammatory levels, matrix metalloprotein expression, and periodontal bone loss. So this is an important finding which will favor the link between the changes in the oral microbiome in a diabetes. Diabetes also affects the mesenchymal cells in the host, including periodontal ligament cells, osteoblasts, osteocytes, which increases the rankle expression and reduces couple bone formation following an episode of periodontal bone loss. These are all studies which favors this linkage. However, the composition of the dental plaque in diabetes also has been studied using 16 sRNA sequencing study, and they have found a certain typical microorganisms in the subgingival dental plaque. Overall, the distribution of microbiome differs according to glycemic status and or the presence of periodontal diseases. The risk of developing periodontitis in patients with diabetes has been reported to be 3 times higher than that of the general population. Anyway, this study is little older studies, but basically the link has been accepted by more studies than the contradicting findings. Of course, how this diabetes play a role in inflammation, and by directly as well as through the bacteria and possibility of periodontal ligament cells alteration plus the changes in the inflammatory response will be largely discussed in this flowchart. I think this flowchart will be quite summarizing the statement which I have made till now. Just a minute. I think it was stuck somewhere. 1 minute. Okay. Now these are all we have discussed more on a periodontal ligament and the diabetes related. Of course, the oral candidiasis is an most opportunistic infection frequently caused in Candida albicans. Many predisposing factors can lead to this infection. This includes smoking, xerostomia, endocrine, and metabolic diseases. Derived from the deregulation of the oral microbiota equilibrium that increments the establishment of pathogenic organisms, which lead to the presence of pathogenic bacteria, which I have already discussed. With type 2 diabetic with non-diabetic obese individuals and non-diabetics with normal weight and found a higher abundance of phylum Actinobacteria, Actinomycetiae, Bifidobacteriaceae, and all these and Micrococcaceae families were less abundant among diabetic subject compared to the normal weight controls. Another study found a decrease in the biological and phylogenetic oral microbiome diversity in diabetics in comparison to non-diabetics from South Arabia. These evidences was related to in increased pathogenic content in the diabetic oral microbiome. Now, coming to the fungal infection, diabetics are relatively more susceptible to fungal infections in areas of moisture and trauma. Of course, the oral cavity is very favorable. But in the absence of dentures, a high glycosylated hemoglobin concentration is an important risk factor for yeast infection. So the point here is if a person is in a denture wear, even a mild diabetic changes or even a controlled diabetic may have a what is that called as denture-induced candidiasis. Now, oral candidiasis is a most severe fungal infection of diabetic patients found in the oral cavity with the scrapable white plaques. It is we know that Candida is a normal commensal organism. The transition from commensal to pathogenic is the various predisposing factors are important, and the main one of the main factor is the immune status of the individual, including diabetic mellitus. Nowadays, a lot of things that we are hearing about the COVID and relation between candidiasis and mucormycosis. Although I think the incidence of candidiasis will be more and mucormycosis, because since it is more dangerous and it will be it would have been reported in a cases where it is diagnosed or identified in a very later stages would have been given, whereas Candida and all those things would have been handled very early. But anyway, the importance of I think one who is diabetic need to be more worried about this candidiasis as this microorganism. These predisposing factors we have discussed: oral hygiene, glycemic control, smoking, duration of diabetes, types of therapy, and xerostomia has been linked to this candidiasis. There is an increased level of salivary glucose and decreased flow is always associated with this candidiasis. Candidiasis could be an acute candidiasis, pseudomembranous candidiasis, acute atrophic candidiasis, and it could be a chronic candidiasis like hyperplastic candidiasis, or you can call it as a candida leukoplakia, and something like that, angular cheilitis. All they say that the candida species colonization is more in type 1 diabetes mellitus compared to type 2 diabetes mellitus, while definitely it is more in diabetes mellitus compared to a normal individual. And these are all the clinical presentations of the candidiasis, and the left one is without dentures and the right one is with denture, and this one is a what you say angular cheilitis, and this is what is candidal organism in a past stained exfoliated cytology specimen. Tongue lesions, tobacco using, denture wearing, which directly influence the oral candida species and development of oral candida infection. And the age is also an important risk factor. Oral candidiasis would result in the pain and discomfort or oral cavity, which would be responsible for the malnutrition in a diabetic patient. So they also need to be looked into that. And we, along with the Candida, we have all other aspergillosis, histoplasmosis, all and zygomycosis, that is your mucormycosis, also has been linked to diabetes and oral microflora. But this mucormycosis is not as common as aspergillosis, and the most common one is the candidiasis. And many times, because since it is very closely related to the oropharynx and nasopharynx and the respiratory system, we always see the extension of these lesions into the oral cavity, and or sometimes even primary lesions at the oral cavity. And usually this mucormycosis is seen in a severe altered immune compromised status. I think this is what is about the other lesions like cryptococci, the organisms looks, the aspergillosis organ looks like, and this is what is a mucormycosis case, and this is happened to be, I think it has reported maybe 10 years back to us, a diabetic patient. She had a lesion in the nasopharyngeal area, and even the lesion was extended into the oral cavity. This is another gentleman with the diabetes, had a oral lesion, and later on histopathology, it was mucormycosis. So linking diabetes, into the dental caries, we know the dental caries is a polymicrobial disease as well as a multifactorial involvement in it. So salivary dysfunction is the one factor which has been considered in a diabetic patient with increased risk for dental caries. Of course, there is no clear trend in the research when it comes to a link between dental caries and diabetes compared to that of a periodontal disease and the dental diabetes. The highly significant difference of mean DMFT value compared to study group has been studied. And they have said that the organism like Bilhardia has been linked to the children with dental caries. And coming to the latest information was that now even the microbiome or the oral microbiome includes the SARS virus, which can be detected by saliva. So the one more aspect which I said, the relationship between the diabetes and oral microbiome, it's their bidirectional relationship, whether oral microbiome alters the diabetes status. Now, in this regard, they say that poor periodontal condition would worsen glycemic control as well. Taste dysfunction has been reported to occur more frequently in patients with poorly controlled diabetes as compared to healthy controls. And this taste disturbance has also been reported to lead to a poor glycemic control by inhibiting the ability to maintain a good diet. Then they say oral oral bacteria can migrate to the other body sites, causing inflammation both locally and systemically. The enrichment of these opportunistic pathogens in the elderly patient with diabetes may contribute to inflammation and insulin resistance. So the oral dysbacteriosis may not only represent a typical feature of hyperglycemia, but might also contribute to the disease progression. Staphylococcus is a more common pathogenic genus which could induce a cross infection and dissemination from the oral cavity to the other body sites. The treatment of oral disease has been shown to be associated with improved glycemic control and reduction in glycated hemoglobin. I think this is also favors that the bidirectional relation between the diabetes and the oral microbiome. And the studies have shown that individuals with diabetes are more likely to have peritonitis with increased severity when their diabetes is controlled or poorly controlled. And there is also, they say that human intervention studies of probiotic yogurt containing bifidobacterium lactis resulted in improving in glucose tolerance and glucose induces insulin secretion, and HB1AC and antioxidant and activities are altered in this. Coming to the future perspective of this oral microbiome in diabetes is, our clinical goal should be to re-establish the symbiotic equilibrium of oral microbiome, whatever means are necessary for an individual patient. We know that abscess, dental caries, gingivitis, and periodontal diseases, if oral bacteria can gain entrance into deeper tissues, they may cause abscess of all your bone, lung, brain, or the extremities. Such infections usually contain mixtures of bacteria with bacteroids. Melanogenicus often playing a dominant role here. If oral streptococci are introduced into wounds created by dental manipulation or during dental procedure, they may adhere to it and adhere to the heart walls and initiate subacute bacterial endocarditis. This is how the picture shows the how an oral microbiome disseminates into the different other organs. Now, very little is studied on oral microbiome. There is lot of things are unknown. Many of the organisms are not been cultured, not been grown in the laboratories. Many have been not been named, and what we and this vast uncultivated species and the lack of reference genomes are not there. And most of the studies done earlier are using RNA gene sequencing, not single genomic cell studies. And of late, they have started doing single cell genomic studies, which is giving more informations. We know that oral cavity contains one of the most diverse and unique communities of microbes in the human body, yet this niche is relatively understood as compared to the gut. So there is a lot of scope for the study in this field. Oral microbiota may provide a potential biomarker in the diagnosis of some systemic diseases, including your diabetes. Improvements of sequencing techniques and costs continue to be propel the field of microbiome research. Of course, this all is a very expensive field and you need technical expert and things like that. So this is still quite far from us. And some more things like research on how food extracts play a relevant role in improving oral flora remains. Right now, the information is limited. And one more thing is we have something called as Human Oral Genome Database, which is gives you all the information which is available in the internet. You can just log in and see that, which is launched in 2020. The homepage appears something like this. The possibility of probiotic treatment to restore and maintain normal functions of human associated biofilm microbiota. The studies have shown that specifically targeted antimicrobial peptides eliminate streptococcal mutants from the oral biofilms. They may play a major role in future in preventing dental caries. Oral microbiome transplants for managing oral biofilm has been in the studies. And even the genus Granuloticula in the family of Gemelaceae showed a higher abundance among diabetic and non-diabetic obese participant, and they say it may predict a dysbiosis. It's a predictive marker for diabetes. So these are all the things which links or the role of microbiome as in the future. There is lot has to come from this field. Just a minute. Thank you for your patience listening. And that's what it says in Greek. I hope all other things which I explained is not in Greek and Latin. Thank you, one and all. I once again thanks the organizing team for giving me an opportunity for presenting this webinar, especially to Dr. Anita for this invitation. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We got a colossal knowledge on this subject, and also we could comprehend the subject very well. Panelists, kindly present your views on the subject.
That was a wonderful presentation, Dr. Pushparaj.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, madam.
Madam, Vandana madam, would you like to say? Vandana madam? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Tejashree. Good morning.
Good morning, madam. Would you like to say?
I wish to say that it's a in-depth an effort to have gone into oral microbiome, and which is never ending, and it's always it always says that there's a lot to do with the oral microbe, and especially with diabetes. And I just wish to add that clinical transfer from this presentation, provided I can say a few words on it. Can I just share it?
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Basically what happens is the microbes doesn't just remain at lab. We also carry it to the clinical issues. One example is whenever there is a resistance to the antimicrobials which are used on a conventional basis. So I wish to add that many a times we feel, how do we go ahead further? So in such issues, the microbes in relation to periodontitis within diabetes cases should be extended with MBC and time kill curve tests, which will define a better antimicrobial potential of each agent, which is always to be considered by the clinicians. Because many a times we don't do this and we go on changing the antimicrobials for a patient, and he's burdened with antimicrobials. What do you say, Tejashree, with this?
Definitely, I wanted to touch on that. If Dr. Pushparaj could tell us what routine investigations are done in such cases. So many of these diabetic patients come with these oral infections. What routine investigations are asked? Sir, are you there?
Yeah. Okay. That's an
Madam, what I would say is unless we know what the microorganism is, we will not be able to do any antimicrobial susceptibility testing. Correct. So there should be the agent to be identified and then carry out. Yes. And it's important to know whether it's an aerobe or anaerobe.
Correct.
Yes, madam. And also the treatment, I would like to know whether it does it differ in diabetic patients, and what is given in non-diabetic patients with this oral infections. This would definitely help us in controlling the infection.
No, first of all, I would like to say in any cases of diagnosing and then presenting as a treatment protocol of giving the antimicrobials, the first part of antibiotic or the antimicrobial testing should be done and identify the organism before you do that. That yes. is usually not a case. And many a times we load them with antimicrobials one after the other just to expect some kind of relief. Okay. So what I would say is they should start with the identification of the organisms, identify first from a given case, and then go ahead with the antimicrobial testing, and go beyond MIC. I would say go for the MBC also, and then time kill curve, so that you will define the concentration of the antimicrobial that you want to give. And further, especially with the interest of periodont, from the periodontal point of view, I wish to add, we are coming out with anti-biofilm assays these days, which are more specific to the organisms which play a role in the case of periodontitis. Okay, these are being under, this is an extended version of MIC. So anti-biofilm assays are doing a good job. wherein we can define the antimicrobials for a patient and then not to burden them with loads of antimicrobials. This is one clinical transfer which I wanted to add from this presentation. And the routine goes like that. We don't differ anything in diabetic and non-diabetic as the question goes from you. Because basically the treatment of periodontitis is involved by us, and then the diabetic status is always controlled by the physician. Okay, the only precaution is here what I wanted to suggest was identify the organisms which are presented in diabetic patients, and then for periodontal cause, for the periodontitis, and then go ahead with the prescription of an antimicrobial, which is more specific, and then they are not burdened with loads of antimicrobials over and over. Because once you try to have the fungal diseases or try to take upper hand in these cases, as we all know. So that is more worse to treat than the bacterial infections. Okay, so this is one clinical transfer which I would like to say. And also please try to remember the dorsal tongue, the tongue of the dorsum of the tongue harbors extensive periodontopathologens, which also play an important role in periodontitis. It's not just from the pockets. Okay, that is another niche where we have to concentrate. And there are very few studies. There are hardly any studies from India. And I should proudly say that we have come out from this in 2011. And dorsum of the tongue plays a very important role compared with the periodontal pockets, which harbors more number of periodontopathogens. So try to play an important role. So treating that also by means of use of local antimicrobial agents in the form of mouthwashes also tries to control. But unfortunately, what is happening is when we give antimicrobial agent, it is also trying to interfere with the commensals. That makes it worse in diabetic patients. That our commensals are also being influenced with antimicrobials, which worsens the situation. And which that's why presently we are there are situations nano targeted treatments are available presently in periodontics as a higher from the higher research centers, which they are directing it to the biofilm so that they can disrupt the biofilm and then further stop the diseases, prevent the diseases. So these targeted treatments, antimicrobials for the diabetes, which will be very, very important because they are prone for not only bacterial infection, if something happens, a little bit of change in their host immune response, they are prone for fungal infections, which are very difficult to treat. So this is what I would like to say here. Treat the diabetes with care. With all the cases, yeah, we have to treat with care. But microbes play a pivotal role in case of diabetes because they just go with the glycemic levels in the blood, and then without our knowledge, we are trying to encourage even the fungal infections. So we have to be careful when we treat diabetic from this aspect. So it's always best to identify in a given case of diabetes and periodontitis, identify the organisms in a nutshell, and then go ahead with all those testing for the antibiotic sensitivity tests, extended with the antibiofilm assays, and then give them a better antimicrobial so that the periodontitis responds better, right? And this is what I wanted to add, and also pay attention to the dorsum of the tongue. And the halitosis, which is a very important clinical feature, it also evolves from not only from the diabetic status, also from the periodontopathogens, some of them which are harbored on the tongue especially. So tongue cleaning is to be kept in mind in these cases of oral hygiene measures. Okay, these were the points which I would like to add. And Professor Pushparaj Shetty gave a very deep rooted insight onto microbes. And then we have, it's never ending because when I was a student, I knew there was 300 species. Now it is not less than 1,000 species. So every time the world is increasing in the oral microbial flora, and this we have to keep in mind. And how we go ahead and how we stop it, it's beyond the clinician's control. But microbes are very important that beyond anything else, even the host immunity, the oral microbes which also influence the host immunity has to be taken care at an initial stage to bring about good prevention as well as treatment for diabetes and as well as periodontitis. I think I just wanted to add this much. Further things are there, of course, and I think it's good to stop here and then. Of course, if the Curaden is there with all of you, I've been seeing that and they have a good support for the research. I wish the SIG group can take up lot of research activity based on microbes in a direction which from India it can grow, because there are very few studies which comes from India, and JSS Center SIG group can take up this, and if there is any external committee to be added, I think I can welcome myself here and then help it out, and then that's how I enjoy being an academician. Okay, thank you,
ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for
Thank-
those
Yes,
words for our SIG. Really honored and privileged.
Anita, you made me speak. Thank you so much on the microbes.
Sharing the screen.
And I wish to thank
Ma'am,
now. Thank you till little later. Yeah.
ma'am, thank you for wanting to work with us. I think that would be the best thing for us. I will talk it out with Ravindra sir and let you know, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is how to end my just a few words with pranams to Guruji and JSS Swamiji and the whole of my friends. Hello to all of you. I love you all, starting from say Ravindra, Deepika, Mahima, Kartikeya, and Jyoti, all of you. And it's a wonderful team and wonderful remembrance to all of you. And most important feel of mine was seeing Madam Pramoda Devi on the platform. My humble this thing, it was excitement and an emotion to be with her on the platform. And please extend our heartfelt gratitude to her from my whole of my family. And then love the whole session. Thank you so much. And go with this, Sanita. And I wish
Thank you, ma'am.
TP is also a good friend of mine who can be always besides me for all that from the beginning, from Government Dental College to BDCH. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Ma'am, there are some questions. Can we take that? Or we finished with that, no? Any more questions we have? Mohit?
Madam has asked one question, that was the test, what we usually do. Basically, we don't do any microbiological investigations in a routine. I know it is absolutely zero, other than investigations for research projects. The involvement of microbiological investigations in a routine dental practice is very, very minimum. However, the identification of an individual organism may not be that important because most of these are polymicrobial. But I feel the antibiotic sensitivity test, at least in the case of abscesses, has to be done so that unnecessary or use of these antibiotics and later changing might be minimized. So that's what I wanted to answer to the prior question, madam. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And it's also important now because of the pandemic to make diagnosis of mucormycosis. So it's very important one has high suspicion and get the relevant investigation done, because a simple KOH would identify the organism, give a clue to what it could be, as it's an angio-invasive fungi. So that is my point here. And one more thing is, what are your thoughts on the saliva being used as a sample for diagnosis of SARS-CoV? Is it being done anywhere? Any thoughts on that, sir?
There is one report which said, which has come, has said that it has been identified by the, and this was a marker study which has been that the salivary gland cells are showing the antibodies detected by IHC type of work it is. But saliva as a routine or by what you say thing which I am not come across, but we have been hearing that it can be used, but the genuinity of that and the scientific background, I don't have any idea.
Okay. Anita? Anita,
Yes, ma'am.
should we close?
Okay, ma'am. I think we can close the session of this.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Israq sir, Dr. Tejasvi ma'am, and Desai Vandana ma'am.
In this
It
village,
was a great pleasure to
the
have you.
disease. This village is all
And I think it was a power-packed
and it's all because
session on microbes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I request you to accept the certificate as a token of for appreciation. I now request Dr. Tejasvi ma'am and Dr. Vandana ma'am to accept the certificate as a token of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We shall now play a short video and we'll be back soon as we have an interesting session ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Tejasvi. It was nice interacting with you. As
Thank you,
well,
madam.
Pushparaj.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Nice seeing you on platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you have a wonderful technical team, doctors, being a part of your this SIG. I loved it. They've been doing a good job here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Wishes to, yes, Sumuk, very nice name.
Thank you, ma'am.
And get going, Sumuk Bharadwaj. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.